origin of Bitcoin. Despite the fact that most people are familiar with Bitcoin, I frequently hear people wonder, why was Bitcoin created? To address this topic, I'll have to give you a quick overview of the financial system in place at the time Bitcoin was established, as well as the issues that surrounding it. This is not financial advice. Before we move on to the next step, subscribe to my YouTube channel. So, what do you do with your money now? The obvious solution is that you either save money or spend it. You keep it in your bank account and can spend it whenever you want later. Have you ever wondered what happens to the money you deposit with a bank? Banks spend our funds in a variety of projects and provide loans to those in need. What happens, though, when the banks lose the money that people trusted them to keep safe? In 5 words, the answer is the financial crisis of 2008. You might be wondering why you need to know about the financial crisis in order to learn more about Bitcoin's origins. Simply said, the financial crisis exposed banks and other financial institutions' inherent flaws. Following the financial crisis, individuals began to dream for a new monetary system that would not have the drawbacks of traditional currencies. People did not make much money in the beginning, and they kept whatever they earned in their home for safekeeping. People required confidence that their money would be safe as they started earning more money, because their residences may be stolen into and robbed. People began to deposit their money in several banks after realizing the necessity for security. These banks began to entice consumers by offering a variety of deposit schemes. Now I'm going to take you back to the 2008 financial crisis. In the United States, banks began to provide hazardous loans to people in order to attract new customers, and as a result, banks were forced to deal with substantial loan defaults. Many banks failed and filed for bankruptcy as a result of people's inability to repay the money. Banks were using people's money to invest in numerous chances at the same time as they were giving out dangerous loans. Some of these investments failed, and the banks lost all of the funds that their customers had entrusted to them. As a result, numerous financial institutions failed. As a result of the widespread bankruptcy, the American government attempted to preserve some financial institutions from failure by bailing them out, allowing them to resume normal operations. Now comes the fun part. The banks misplaced the money that clients had deposited with them, leaving the customers with little recourse. The money supplied by the government to the banks was then also the money of the people, who had paid taxes. Customers around the country were dissatisfied as a result of the American government's activities. Because the global economy is interrelated, the events in the United States had an impact on the rest of the world, putting the global economy to a halt. The financial crisis brought to light the issues that come with having your money held by a central authority. What effect do your government's activities have on your money? A country's government spends money to help the country develop. The government is funded by the many sorts of taxes that individuals pay. Now, in the vast majority of cases, the government's expenditures surpass its revenues. To deal with it, governments request that the country's central bank print additional money. The government is attempting to make more money available to the general public in this manner. Another point to consider is that the amount of money that a government can print has no fixed limit. However, while this increases the amount of money in the country's economy, it lowers the value of money currently in circulation. Allow me to illustrate this with an example. Assume there are 100 rupees in circulation and you own 1 rupee. In mathematical terms, you possess 1% of the country's currency. If the government issues more money, the total amount of money in circulation rises to 200 rupees, the value of your money falls to 0.5% of the overall market share. That's a 50% drop in the worth of your money you've saved. Now, these are simply hypothetical terms, but the premise remains the same. When the government spends more money than it earns, the value of our money decreases. As a result, we're obliged to labor non-stop for the rest of our lives in order to keep up with the decline in the value of money. The core idea behind Bitcoin. People want a money that was not controlled by a central authority after the financial crisis. When consumers put their faith in a bank, the bank lost their money, and as a firefighting tactic, the government produced additional money, lowering the value of the money already in circulation in the country. There was always some unpredictability and uncertainty regarding the fall in the value of people's money because the government had no maximum limit on the amount of money it could issue. Bitcoin addressed this issue by stipulating the maximum quantity of bitcoins that may ever be in circulation as well as the rate at which new bitcoins would be created. Because of the coding utilized in its design, the maximum number and rate of production cannot exceed the established restriction. This code is also made public to everyone for easy verification, ensuring that no further bitcoins are produced. In this way, the value of each bitcoin was solely determined by market supply and demand, free of any government intervention, such as when the government manipulates the value of a currency for various reasons. Now, if we use our stored money to complete a transaction, we must rely on a third-party vendor, such as a bank, to authenticate and confirm our transaction. There's no guarantee that the seller won't get greedy and invest our money in unsafe investments, as happened during the 2008 financial crisis. By allowing users to transact directly with one another, Bitcoin has eliminated the need for third-party intermediaries. Simply create a Bitcoin account, also known as a Bitcoin wallet, on your computer or smartphone to keep your Bitcoins. This wallet functions more like a physical wallet than a bank. In this instance, you are your own banker, and your wallet, unlike our old banks, cannot make decisions on its own. Although different firms manage the wallets, the coding used in their construction is made visible and accessible to anyone who wants to look at it. Customers may rest assured that their funds will be safe. How to release new bitcoins and who will receive them? Because the total quantity of bitcoins that could ever be produced was fixed, the next most pressing question was how quickly new bitcoins would be distributed, as well as who would hold the freshly created bitcoins. It was determined that new bitcoins would be released at a gradually declining rate. This means that as the number of bitcoins in the world grows, the number of new bitcoins created will drop, making creation uncommon. This was done in order to provide additional incentives to early adopters and those who came to experience Bitcoin for the first time. It was determined that 50 bitcoins will be released every 10 minutes at first. This was decided at random, and it was also decided that every 4 years, the rate would be halved, also chosen randomly. When you do the arithmetic, you'll find that by the year 2140, there will be a total of 21 million bitcoins in circulation. When you use money from a bank account to complete a transaction, the bank essentially records the transaction and keeps track of your balance for future reference. In the event that someone argues otherwise, these documents serve as proof of transfer. Bitcoin serves the same purpose as other cryptocurrencies in that it keeps track of all transactions and account balances in a database. Validating and saving these transactions to the Bitcoin database involves the use of a computer. Unlike banks, where the process of recording transactions is carried out by a single authority, anyone can now provide their computers to record transactions onto the Bitcoin database. This procedure has been made exceedingly simple thanks to Bitcoin. All you have to do is download and execute software provided by the Bitcoin development team. Miners were those who offered their computers for this reason, and mining was the process of documenting transactions. The newly minted Bitcoins were sent to these miners. Greater Bitcoins were awarded to those who contributed more processing power, i.e. more powerful computers. This was a successful solution to the Bitcoin distribution challenge. Now that the miners had accumulated a large number of Bitcoins, they began to trade them. As Bitcoin got more popular, it was gradually accepted by more merchants, and Bitcoin transactions became more common. The price of Bitcoin began to rise as the quantity of Bitcoins in circulation grew slower than the number of people who began using it. Miners are rewarded with new Bitcoin in exchange for their labor. Almost all miners, however, must pay their operating costs in local fiat currency, including new equipment, employee salaries, and, most importantly, energy expenditures. Most miners are forced to liquidate part, if not all, of their newly created Bitcoins as a result of this. These new coins are available for purchase through exchanges or over-the-counter, OTC, desks. As a result, miners are a pretty steady source of network sell pressure. The impact of this miner-driven sale pressure is likely to diminish as Bitcoin's inflation rate continues to be cut in half every 4 years. In addition, if Bitcoin gets traction in the energy sector, miners may be able to start recouping some of their costs. A public key and a private key are the only two numbers that determine who owns Bitcoin. A username, public key, and a password are a rough equivalent, private key. The one displayed on the blockchain is a hash of the public key called an address. Using the hash adds another degree of protection. It is sufficient for the sender to know your address in order to receive bitcoins. The private key, which is required to send bitcoins to another address, is derived from the public key. Receiving money is simple, but sending it requires identification verification. I hope you find this video helpful. If you liked the video, do like and subscribe as it really helps our channel, and do remember to give your feedback in the comments below. See you in the next video.